Honored to have Professor Dryden with us here today. Professor Dryden is an Emeritus Professor of Psychotherapeutic Studies from Goldsmiths, University of London. He's written and edited over 200 books on RECBT and various related topics. He is visiting India for the first time for a lecture series on rational motive and cognitive behavior therapy and its applications. Thank you, Professor Dryden, for agreeing to talk to us.
My pleasure.
So, this is your first visit to India. So, I'd like to start by asking you, how was your experience of teaching Indian students?
Very favourable. I found the students very engaged in the process, very enthusiastic, asked pertinent, intelligent questions, were more than willing to come up and talk about their problems so that I can demonstrate how I work.
Right.
And so I would sum up and say my experience was very favourable.
Thank you for saying that, and we learned a lot from those lectures too. So thank you for agreeing to do the lectures for us. So we have a lot of students in India who are at the beginning of their career and about to make an important choice about what kind of psychotherapies they would want to learn. So we would like your opinion about what can help them make this decision better about their trainings in psychotherapies.
Well, I think first of all they need to kind of ensure that they're being trained in an approach to psychotherapy that has strong empirical support from the research literature, which RECBT does. Mm-hmm. Dr. Dan David in Romania has recently published several papers showing that RECBT is an effective approach to psychotherapy as compared with placebo, and does equally as well as even more researched approaches like Beck's cognitive therapy. Right. So that's the first thing. I think the second thing is that choose an approach to psychotherapy where they're going to be properly trained, and that means not only going to lectures but to being able to learn the skills, practice the skills, getting feedback on the skills. Right. And so that would be an important factor. I think the other factor is that they can resonate with it personally. Right. And so I think unlike other activities like medicine, where there's an empirical approach, but you don't necessarily have to personally resonate with it, because you can, prescribe. People who are effective practitioners, in my view, are those who not only practice the concepts but live the concepts in their own lives.
Sure. Right. Right. Okay. And so, since we're on this topic, can you highlight some features of RECBT, which according to you are important features, which can then help our listeners to maybe familiarize themselves with the therapy a little bit?
Well, I think that some of the main features of the approach is that it really kind of stresses the importance of attitudes or beliefs in the role of psychological disturbance and how it can be effectively tackled. And in particular, REBT, one of the most distinctive features of the approach is the emphasis that it places on rigid attitudes or beliefs. Right. As being at the very core of psychological disturbance, and flexible attitudes and beliefs as being at the core of psychological health. Right. Some of the other features are that it is very, it's an explicit approach. It argues that practitioners can be very clear about what the concepts are, can teach these concepts, clients can learn them, and clients can learn to be their own therapists with their therapist's help.
Sure. Okay, and since we know that you traveled to many countries in all of your years of practice and training, and you're familiar with different cultural aspects. Could you talk a little bit about some culture-specific aspects of RECBT, or do its applications differ in different cultures?
Well, REBT, RECBT has an ABC model of psychological disturbance and health. It says that people disturb themselves at B, their basic attitudes, because they hold rigid and extreme attitudes or beliefs about A. Now, in my view, adversities are coloured by culture.
Right.
Beliefs aren't. Beliefs are universal. So I've done demonstrations in many parts of the world, and although the adversities are different, so for example in India, I find that there are more adversities being talked about as a result of arranged marriages and the difficulties that people face in terms of living with or very close by their in-laws. So the culture would manifest itself at A. In my view, culture is heavily featured at A. And maybe at the language that people talk about, what emotions they have, and maybe a little bit about how they behave as a result of experiencing those emotions. So, for example, in the West, people might be more encouraged to stand up for themselves, whereas elsewhere there may be kind of like cultural or societal prohibitions on that. But so I'd say, but largely culture occurs at A, but B, the most important factor is the beliefs and attitudes that people hold. So I think that's how it.
Right.
So I think it's important, though, while recognising the culture, one should not advisedly label somebody from a culture as having certain codes of practice. Always focus on the individual, no matter where you are.
That's important, right? So would it be fair then, in this context, to say that therefore that makes RECBT highly likely to be applicable in diverse cultures?
Yes, because of the universality of the B.
Sure. Okay, and you've been practicing since the 1970s, you've been training since the 1970s.
I started young.
Yes, sure. Right, so, and you've written so many books that all of us have learned from. So, over the years, and this may be a little broad question, but I'd like you to help us understand, how do you think you see RECBT has been evolved over these years? So, what are the significant changes, or?
Well, I think that actually, if you look at what Albert Ellis was saying back in the 1950s, and you compare it to what we say, or what his last book was saying, and what some of us are still contributing to the literature say. I mean, some of the ideas are very similar, but how they are expressed is different. So if you look at the Gloria film, which is I think Gloria trilogy, Albert Ellis talks about making declamatory sentences, statements.
Sure.
Now nobody talks about that. We talk about beliefs, and now I talk about attitudes. So that's another one, if you like. I use the word attitude rather than beliefs because the actual term, I think, of attitude is more closely approximating what we currently or mainly call beliefs. So that's a development. So I think, though, the core of REBT, which is the role of rigid and extreme attitudes or beliefs in psychological disturbance, and the role of flexible and non-extreme attitudes and beliefs, are really kind of present very early on, and it's kind of similar. Now, what has changed is I think the REBT's kind of connection with the broader world of psychotherapy. So I think now we kind of are much more mindful of the working alliance than perhaps we were, and sort of drawing upon that. I personally draw upon concept of pluralism, counselling psychotherapy. So I think there is an openness, and I think this is one of the features of REBT. If we kind of practice the importance of flexibility and openness to clients, I think we need to show that in themselves. And so that I personally have really drawn upon different frameworks, different ideas from other approaches to psychotherapy, as well as other approaches to cognitive behaviour therapy. And I think there's a willingness for people to do that, while retaining the core. So its pluralistic aspects is that we can both retain the core and be open to what other people, you know, are saying are common features, important concepts, general concepts that will help us to understand the effective practice of psychotherapy.
Sure. And you've recently done some work in single session therapy?
Yes, that's a development that I have. I've been very struck by the literature on single session therapy, broadly speaking, and I have pioneered a single session integrated CBT approach, which is largely REBT, but not exclusively REBT oriented. And I also I'm writing a book which will hopefully come out sometime in 2018 on what I call very brief therapeutic conversations. What I've shown in my trip this year in India is that what can be achieved in a very short period of time. So I did about 15 demonstration conversations with volunteers, and I think the longest was just over half an hour. Most of them were about sort of 15, 16 minutes. And I showed in that period what you can achieve in a very short period of time. Now, most of the most frequently occurring number of sessions that people have internationally is one. Most people come for one session and then come back. So if they're coming for one session, why not, you know, do as much as you can in that one session? And actually, Albert used to do that. Albert Ellis used to do that. Because he didn't know whether people were going to come back, so he didn't spend the first session doing a very intensive case formulation, because he didn't know whether they were going to come back.
Right.
And so I think that I think shows that I'm drawing upon the very efficient nature of REBT, but drawing also upon the broader literature of single session work.
Yes. So that sounds interesting. We're looking forward to the book. And so the last question is that, so in Vivo Mumbai Center for REBT is an affiliate center with the Albert Ellis Institute, New York. And REBT in India is at an emerging stage right now, and as an affiliate center, we'd like your suggestions about what could we do to promote REBT in India.
To whom?
To mental health practitioners, as well as people who could be recipients of it, clients who could come and benefit from it.
Make videos of people doing therapy. I'm quite happy to come back here and, you know, do many video demonstrations of REBT, which you then can actually, discriminate. But mainly, I think, have people like yourself doing it, because I think the more that people who are indigenous to the country show it, as well as visiting people like myself, then people can see how the therapy unfolds in practice, and then they have a clearer idea whether they resonate to it or not.
Yes.
So give public talks on themes. I mean, I don't know if you have meet-up groups in India. You have meet-up groups in India?
Not as many.
Okay, so what I've done for many years in London is once a month I do a lecture on a topic, say how to deal with rejection, and then I do one or two demonstrations with the audience on how to deal with rejection. Sure. You can do that, you can write books, you can give lectures, do demonstrations, get on the
Right.
radio talking about various
Yes.
points, and so use social media
Sure.
um,
Sure.
in ways that presumably either you know about or you can be shown how to use. And so I don't know whether anybody's doing that in India, because if they're not, then you've got a good opportunity to get a head start.
Sure, and we do our best to take up those points and learn from them and implement them.
Yeah.
So thank you so much for talking to us, Professor
My pleasure.
Dryden. This was very helpful and informative.
Good.
Thank you.
Thank you very much.